Britain keeps producing prehistoric discoveries that do not fit the simple Stonehenge story most people were taught. A monument built not in a single moment, but in stages across centuries. Stones that were dragged from mountains far outside Salisbury Plain. A landscape filled with earthworks, burials, and buried timber that surrounds the famous stone circle on every side. And, in recent years, discoveries beneath the soil that researchers are still trying to explain. The pattern is the same every time. Researchers arrive expecting one thing. The ground shows them something else. Most people picture Stonehenge as a ring of stones standing alone on an open plain. Isolated, finished, a single object dropped into an empty landscape. But the more archaeologists survey the ground around it, the harder that picture becomes to maintain. What is established is this: Stonehenge does not stand alone. It never did. It is one visible piece of a landscape that was used, shaped, and returned to for thousands of years. And some of the most important parts of that landscape were invisible until recently, hidden beneath the surface, detected only by instruments that can read the ground without breaking it. This is the story of what lies around Stonehenge, beneath it, and beyond it, and why each new discovery does not solve the mystery. It widens it. Begin with the monument itself. Stonehenge sits on Salisbury Plain in Wiltshire, in southern England. It is a chalk landscape, open, rolling, and unusually rich in prehistoric remains. The monument is managed by English Heritage, and the wider landscape is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, studied for more than a century by archaeologists, surveyors, and universities across Britain. The stones themselves fall into two main types: the large sarsen stones, some weighing more than 20 tons, and the smaller blue stones set within and around them. For a long time, the question of where these stones came from seemed settled. It was not. The sarsens were long thought to come from the Marlborough Downs, roughly 25 kilometers to the north. In 2020, a study published in the journal Science Advances tested the chemistry of the stones and traced the majority of the large sarsens to a specific area called West Woods, near Marlborough. For the first time, a likely source for most of the giant stones had a name and a location. But the sarsens were never the deepest mystery. The blue stones were. The blue stones are smaller, but they traveled much further. Decades of geological work have traced these stones not to Wiltshire at all, but to the Preseli Hills in West Wales, more than 200 kilometers away. Researchers have identified specific rock outcrops, including sites known as Carn Godog and Craig Rosy Felon, as sources for some of the blue stones. Let that distance settle for a moment. Stones weighing 2 to 4 tons each moved across more than 200 kilometers of prehistoric Britain, without wheels, without roads, without metal tools, to a monument that would take centuries to complete. The question of how they were moved is debated. The question of why is still open. And here the story takes a turn that researchers are still working through. In 2021, archaeologists published evidence of a dismantled stone circle in the Preseli Hills, at a site called Wan Mon. The proposal was striking, that some of the blue stones may have first stood in a circle in Wales before being taken down and carried east to Salisbury Plain. The interpretation is debated, and not all archaeologists accept it. But the empty stone sockets at Wan Mon are real, and they do not have a simple explanation. The discovery does not close the question of the blue stones. It makes it larger. Now widen the view, and the landscape begins to fill in. Stonehenge is connected to the wider land by an earthwork known as the Avenue. It is a pair of parallel banks and ditches running from the northeastern entrance of the monument, leading away across the plain. Its final stretch aligns with the movement of the sun at the solstices. This is one of the few alignments at Stonehenge that is widely accepted, rather than speculated. The avenue does not lead nowhere. Researchers traced its route, and it bends and it descends, and it heads toward water. It runs in the direction of the river Avon. And at the point where it is thought to meet the river, archaeologists found something else. In 2009, excavations led by researchers, including a team from the Stonehenge Riverside Project, uncovered the remains of a small circular monument on the bank of the river Avon. It was given the name Blue Stonehenge. Within it were stone sockets, empty now, but their size and shape suggested they had once held blue stones, the same kind of stones that traveled from Wales. A smaller circle beside the river, connected by the avenue to Stonehenge itself. The picture this suggests is not a single monument. It is a route, stone, water, and movement, linked across the landscape. What that route was for remains uncertain. But the idea of Stonehenge as an isolated object becomes harder to maintain with every site that is found connected to it. Cross the river, and the landscape grows stranger still. Less than 3 kilometers northeast of Stonehenge lies Durrington Walls. It is one of the largest henge monuments in Britain, a vast earthwork enclosure far bigger in area than Stonehenge itself, though built of bank and ditch rather than standing stone. Excavations at Durrington Walls revealed the remains of houses, many of them, evidence of a settlement occupied by large numbers of people with enormous quantities of animal bone, particularly pig, suggesting feasting on a significant scale. Analysis of those animal remains indicated that some had been brought to the site from distant parts of Britain. This changed the interpretation of the whole area. The leading suggestion among many researchers is that Durrington Walls was a place of the living, where people gathered, built, and feasted, while Stonehenge, with its burials and its stone, was a place of the dead. 2 monuments, linked by the river, expressing 2 halves of a single world. It is a powerful interpretation. It is also, in part, still debated. What is established is the scale of the gathering. What remains uncertain is exactly what it meant. And then, beneath Durrington Walls, the ground produced something no one was looking for. In 2020, a team of researchers using geophysical survey, reading the ground with instruments rather than digging, announced the detection of a ring of large pits surrounding the Durrington Walls area. More than 20 of them, each several meters across and several meters deep, arranged in a vast circle perhaps 2 kilometers in diameter. Nothing of this scale had been expected. The pits are far larger than ordinary prehistoric features, and their arrangement appears deliberate. The researchers, drawn from several British universities, described it as one of the largest prehistoric structures ever found in Britain. What were the pits for? That is still being studied. Whether every pit in the ring is the same age, and whether they formed a single planned structure, continues to be examined and debated. The discovery does not solve the mystery of this landscape. It widens it, literally, across 2 kilometers of ground that no one knew held anything at all. Step back, and a second henge enters the picture, this one in timber. Close to Durrington Walls stands Woodhenge, a monument first identified from the air in the 1920s when crop marks revealed a pattern of concentric rings beneath a field. Excavation showed it had once held rings of wooden posts arranged in ovals with a long axis that, like Stonehenge, appears oriented toward the midsummer sunrise. Timber, where Stonehenge has stone. Posts, where Stonehenge has pillars. The repetition of the same ideas in different materials across the same few kilometers of plain. These were not isolated experiments. They were part of a tradition, a landscape where the same alignments, the same gatherings, and the same concern with the movement of the sun appear again and again, monument after monument. And there is the matter of the dead. Stonehenge is surrounded by burial mounds. Across Salisbury Plain, the round barrows of later prehistory cluster thickly around the monument, as though the stones drew the dead toward them for centuries after they were raised. But the burials at Stonehenge itself are older than many people assume. Excavations have recovered cremated human remains, from the earliest phases of the site, from a time before the great Sarsens were even raised. Some researchers have argued that Stonehenge was, among other things, one of the largest known cremation cemeteries of its period in Britain. This complicates the simple story again. Before it was a ring of giant stones, Stonehenge may already have been a place of the dead. The monument we see is not the beginning, it is a late chapter, built on top of something older. By this point, the pattern is clear. Stonehenge was not standing alone. It was one visible piece of a landscape that had been used, altered, and remembered for thousands of years. A circle of stone connected by an avenue to a river. A smaller circle of bluestone at the water's edge. A vast settlement of the living across the river. A ring of enormous pits hidden beneath the soil. A timber monument echoing the same alignments. And, beneath all of it, the cremated dead. Researchers arrived expecting a monument. The landscape showed them a world. So what was it for? Here, the honest answer is that several explanations are offered, and no single one accounts for everything. One interpretation sees Stonehenge as a ceremonial gathering place, a center where scattered communities came together at fixed points in the year, perhaps drawn from across Britain, as the animal bones at Durrington Walls suggest. Another emphasizes the dead, a monument to ancestors, a place where the living maintained a relationship with those who came before, expressed through burial, stone, and ritual. A third focuses on the sky. The solstice alignment of the avenue and the axis of the monument is widely accepted. Whether Stonehenge functioned as a precise astronomical instrument in any broader sense is far more debated, and claims beyond the solstice orientation are treated with caution by most archaeologists. A fourth interpretation is social and political, the suggestion that building Stonehenge and moving its stones across vast distances was itself the point. That the labor united communities, and that the act of construction bound people together across a wide and scattered land. And running through all of these is the theme of movement, stone carried from Wales, people traveling from far away, routes linking water and monument. Stonehenge as a destination at the heart of a landscape designed to be moved through. These explanations are not all in conflict. The most likely truth is that the monument meant different things in different centuries to different generations who inherited it, changed it, and added to it. What is established is the scale of human effort. What remains uncertain is the belief that drove it. Return now to the deepest question, the one the ground keeps reopening. For all that has been mapped, surveyed, and excavated, large parts of this landscape have never been dug. The pits around Durrington Walls were invisible until instruments found them. The dismantled circle in Wales was unrecognized for decades. Each new technique, ground-penetrating radar, chemical sourcing, geophysical survey, has not delivered a final answer. It has revealed another layer. That is the part that unsettles. Every time researchers believe they have measured the edge of this landscape, the edge moves. The story does not close. It expands beneath their feet. What was discovered beneath and around Stonehenge does not give us a finished monument with a single meaning. It gives us a landscape still being read, older, larger, and more deliberate than the simple version most of us were taught. Britain's prehistoric record is not a fixed story. It is a landscape still being uncovered. Stonehenge may be the most famous part of it, but it was never the whole thing. The plain around it holds circles, settlements, pits, and the dead, and almost certainly holds more that has not yet been found. If one of these discoveries changed how you see ancient Britain, leave it in the comments. Subscribe for more ancient sites that keep rewriting what researchers thought they knew.